listening to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Bear, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining me on the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me.
I meant to have this happen last month. I missed the boat. You were busy. Life is busy. It is what it is, right? But I'm glad that you're joining us now.
I'm glad we could get together, buddy.
Yeah. I wanted to lead off because I'm really excited about what you guys have been up to. And I will say, first and foremost, I actually use your products, your shorts in particular. When I go train, I use Born Primitive. I didn't know who you were when I bought those, but I learned a little bit more about what you guys were up to through, I think, a mutual friend, Ray Cash Care, who I know you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been excited to have this conversation because I already use what you guys are doing, and then I learned more about your mission, and I love what you're up to.
Well, I appreciate you repping the brand. Hopefully you like the shorts.
I do, man. I do. They keep everything secure where it needs to be, but they breathe. It's good. It's good.
Love it.
Let's start off the conversation. I know we missed the boat a little bit, but you guys did something pretty cool. And I wish more companies would take a little bit of a play out of your playbook when it comes to how organizations support our veterans, because quite frankly, your organization would not exist without veterans. I know you're a veteran. My organization would not exist without those men and women who have fought for this country and our rights and our freedoms. And you did something where you raised, $11 million in a span of 4 to 5 days? That's pretty incredible, man. And specifically for veterans.
Yeah. So every Veterans Day, we try to do something big to give back during that weekend. We typically make it a 72 or 2-hour, 96-hour event. The last few years, we pledged all profits and donated, $100K back-to-back years, which was great. But this year, we want to try to do something different. It's like, all right, how do we raise the bar on this impact? The idea, I started kicking this around over the summer in June was, hey, what if we paid off a bunch of veteran medical bills? Like that would be kind of cool. We know that some veterans, are experiencing some financial hardships, particularly right now. We also know that our community is plagued with suicide. And that can be one of the contributing factors to that, issue that we're facing. So we thought this would be a cool thing to try to do, particularly right before the holidays. People that are under financial duress, the holiday gets amplified, right? You got little kiddos running around and you got to get them Christmas presents and travel and all these other things. So if you're getting called by creditors and you're maxing out your credit cards and your credit score is shot, not a good time to go into that holiday season. So what started as an idea, August rolled around, and without telling anyone, we paid off $2.5 million of veteran medical bills. And we said, all right, from November 8th to the 11th, ending on Veterans Day, we're going to try to get that number to 5 million. So we're going to pledge all of our sales to get to that $5 million goal and try to rally our customers around it. Fortunately, everyone got really fired up with it and really came out to support the cause. So when we came into work on that Tuesday morning after Veterans Day, I met with my brother, who's our CFO, and Mallory, our co-founder, and we were kind of looking at it like, hey, yes, we pledged to do 5, but the right thing to do is to double this number. By the time it came out in the wash, we ended up doing 11 million in total, because we wanted to round up. We were at 10.5. We're like, screw it, let's just go to 11. Because I was able to get on Fox News, right before Black Friday. And I was like, let's tack another 500 onto this. So, overall,
just throw it on there while you got it.
Yeah. Right. It was really humbling to be able to do that. And what I honestly I think just was a sledgehammer to the heart in a good way, but in a sobering way, was I actually was able to call some of these debt recipients and let them know, and just to hear their stories. This was obviously a concept, in June that, it's not, you don't really humanize it in your head. It's hey, this is a cool impact. When you start talking with the actual people and realize their circumstances, the first girl I talked to, she was a mother in Texas that got in a bad car accident. And she was like, I was literally never going to be able to pay this debt off. She had to relearn all of her basic skills. Another Marine on the list, his debt was $183,000. He was partially paralyzed for a while, single father of 3. There's no way he's paying that off, right? And you start to learn about the downstream effects of once you're on that list, man, you're getting harassed by letters and phone calls from unknown numbers, and your credit score goes, you can't get a loan anymore once you get under a certain credit score, which most of them fall in that category, because if you're with debt collectors, usually your credit score is tanked. Or you can go to some used car lot and you're paying 35% interest. So there's all these like second and third order effects that are created for these people. So once like now I got skin in the game because now I'm emotionally invested, and this was still when we were at the 2.5 to 5 mark. So it was very moving, and we got a lot of really cool letters in the mail already. And of course, a lot of these people thought it was a hoax at first, right? That you get a letter in the mail or an email. I think it's first an email and a text. So some skepticism, but I had to reassure these people like, hey, this is not a hoax. There's no action required. I don't need like your email address and
I'm not a king from Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Don't worry about that. Yeah, right.
Don't go to Western Union and wire someone $9,000 in Afghanistan or something like that. So overall, just a really cool effort. And I have to say this, that our customers deserve the credit. We're simply the vehicle that's facilitating this thing. But the reason we're able to do things like this every year is because I know that the customers will come out and get behind it. And that's a pretty awesome position for us to be in. Now it's a big responsibility, right? Because now I'm already thinking, all right, next year, and I have a good plan for next year.
How do you beat next year?
How do we keep the momentum going? And then hopefully, how do we maybe rub off on some of these other corporations to start using their platform for real good, not checking the corporate box on whatever, thing that they were trying to push that happened to be blowing in the corporate wind that day. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, let's do some real shit for our country. And also our government. It's like shame on our government for making a privately owned family company like Born Primitive having to step in and do something like this when we're wasting all of this money, sending it overseas and spending it on immigrants when like, we can't even take care of our own.
But I do have a question on that one though.
Yeah.
I have a question on that one. So were you guys paying off medical debt, consumer debt?
Yes. And that's important to call out.
Why do veterans have medical debt? Well, help me understand that.
Well, depending on your disability, like, and some people probably get zero disability. Like, I think people assume that you have like free healthcare for life, and that's not the case.
Because I pay a copay, but that's about it, right?
So some of the people that I talked to, it came down to some of it was confusion onto what was covered and what wasn't. And by the time they got the bill, it was too late. And then they disputed it. And they were like,
that's true.
You call the VA.
I'm $30,000 in the hole because of that, by the way.
Exactly.
So that actually has impacted me personally.
And that was multiple of the people. And they say, I've been on the phone. One guy had been disputing it for 2.5 years. But he's an auto mechanic. He's a single dad. He doesn't have time and he can't hire a lawyer, right? He's like, every time I get on the phone with someone, I have to retell the story. And it's, of course, then they forward you to the next VA representative who doesn't. Yeah. So part of it is the system. And particularly some of these people that are in like rural areas, like there's not VA clinics, right? So it's like, you get in a car accident, you go to the ER, and then you have to relearn how to walk and, relearn how to like speak. And all of a sudden you're 20K in the hole and you're like, so a lot of it was not intentional, of course. And that's why, like, for me, it had to be medical bill debt, because I'm not paying for that E4 that bought a Ford Raptor for $100,000 when he got his $10,000 signing bonus. Like, we all know. Which
is probably pretty common for sure.
Oh, yeah. Like, since we were in the military, we can speak about it because it's our own. But, a lot of us are not the most financially responsible. And this was not a bailout for those people. This is for people that, had a circumstances that was not intended. And us just trying to alleviate a little bit of that burden for them, and hopefully, have them go into the holidays with a giant weight off their shoulder, which from those conversations, 100% is what happened. So,
well, I mean, look, I mean, just a little bit, mine's very similar, like to a small fraction of a percentage of what these guys are dealing with. But I had a pectoral tear, like a complete rupture of my pectoral muscle. And I went into that. I was training jiu-jitsu. I went in that afternoon to the ER. They had it looked at, called the VA. I'm like, hey, I went into the ER. They're like, cool, we got you covered. They reimbursed. Then I went to the surgeon to talk with, or a specialist to talk about what surgery I needed, submitted it, went through all the verification, went through all the process. And the VA came back and they said, yeah, you're not in our system. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? You already paid for my ER visit. Like, you literally paid for my ER visit, which is right. They should pay for it. I said, if I'm not in your system, why did you pay for that ER visit? Well, but you didn't fill out the paperwork right. So I filled it out again, sent it in. I called them up. I said, hey, I need to have the surgery taken care of. They said, yeah, we see your paperwork. I'm like, great, cool. We approved. They're like, oh no, you filled it out incorrectly. You need to submit this form. So I submitted the form. Oh no, now it's this form. Now it's that form. Now it's this form. Meanwhile, the surgeon's telling me, hey, you have a short window on this surgery. If you don't get this repaired, the likelihood of this healing diminishes greatly. So I'm like, well, F it. Like, I got to have the surgery. So I went and had the surgery. 30 grand later, called the VA. I'm like, hey, I had to have the surgery. Nope. No approval. I went through multiple scenarios of trying to get it approved and trying to get it taken care of. I'm in the whole 30 grand. Now, fortunately, I'm very grateful. I'm in the position where I can take care of that, but a lot of people aren't. And that sucks, especially when you're promised certain benefits for your hard work and your efforts and the things that you've done.
Yeah, that's such a good example. And that is like, there are thousands of those examples. And that's, I think, why a lot of these people are in the situation they're in. And like, you hit the nail on the head. You know, I had a similar situation where when I got out of the service, they couldn't see me for 10 months, right? Now I have private healthcare because I get it with Born Primitive. So like, it wasn't that big of a deal. I just wanted to get in the system and get like my first intake appointment. But so I was able to, when I got bronchitis, just go down and get it, copay, not a huge deal. Had I gotten a car accident, and I wasn't employed, you know what I mean? And which probably happens with some transitioning veterans who, maybe haven't gotten employment yet. They're trying to figure it out. That could be a financially devastating life event, right? So it's obviously something needs to change. Hopefully, with Trump coming back, they can make that a priority. He seems to, he seems to be aware of some of these shortfalls. And it seems that anything the government runs is, just super inefficient and frustrating. And you can just get on the phone with a VA rep and you can see it right away. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, man, there's no way this person is not going to help me. You know what I mean?
I know, but I will say they're good people.
Yeah. Well,
I will say for them. Yeah. The ones I've dealt with are good people. They're just in a shitty system, but I do believe they're decent people. And I want to make that clarification.
Yeah, I've had a few like reps on the phone that were fantastic. Unfortunately, in my experience, it was inconsistent. You'd have a phenomenal lady, super nice, and I'm going to go out of my way. And then you'd have another person who just was like, seemed like that's the last thing they wanted to be doing. And it was just giving you the runaround. So I think, it could definitely use some work. And, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure the people who serve their country are taken care of. And hopefully, this puts us on a path back to, we made a very small impact. I mean, I think it's going to end up being about 6,000 veterans, which is great. But if I'm being realistic, like we're not even making a dent. So that's why next year, stand by. It's already in the works. We're gonna try to increase that number quite a bit.
I appreciate the humility, but to impact 6,000 veterans, people that have served this country, that's more than a dent, and it may not feel like that in the grand scheme of things. And I appreciate that you guys want to do more. And of course, I'm here to support and help you with that. But yeah, I don't want to dismiss 6,000, veterans that you guys have served. I mean, you're doing a phenomenal work. I do have a question though, and this one might be a little bit controversial. And you said it a minute ago where we can talk about this because we've been a little bit in the system. And I don't put myself at the same level as you and other people that have done way more than I ever did. But where is the line between receiving benefits based on the work and the agreements that we've made and then just taking advantage of the system? Because I've also seen veterans who are like, well, I need a veteran discount at this, and I need this, and I need that. It's like, dude, like, congrats on your service, but did you do that for a perpetual discount on everything for the rest of your life? Or did you do it because you wanted to serve your country?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question. And I'm just going to give you my honest answer. I think an incredible amount of people take advantage of it. And I think you need to earn the right to receive those benefits. Now, I'm not the guy that's going to board the plane early. I'm never asking for a veteran discount. I'm never going to park in the parking spot. Every once in a while, you'll see one of those parking spots, and like, I'm going to the end of the parking lot, and I will walk my ass to, into the store. I don't need that front spot because I served my country for, you know what I mean? Like I reject a lot of that on a personal level, just because that's not how I, want to be. I think when it comes down to disability, that's where it gets, to me, very squirrely, because there's definitely a lot of people, and I've witnessed it, that did nothing physically, right? They weren't in any danger. They didn't beat up their body, and are getting out and are hiring people to try to get, an 80% disability rating. And it's like, okay, you just did 4 years in the Navy and you were on a ship. Why do you need 80% disability the rest of your life? And I think it's okay to call that out. I think, there's tens of thousands of people that are getting a check every month that don't, deserve that. And even, for me, like, my body was just beat to shit. And I only did 8 years. Like, some of my teammates that did 20 plus, I mean, these guys, when they're 50, are going to be limping around the rest of their life. So in my opinion, for those types of guys, they 100% should get taken care of. And even me on a personal level, it's very weird for me to receive benefit from the government. So for me, my pledge to myself is, as long as I'm financially capable, every penny of that I get every year is going straight to charity. And I hope I can say, until I take a dirt nap, hopefully many years from now, that every year that's the case. Now, of course, if for some reason there's some crazy financial hardship that I face, I might have to, go back on that. But that was kind of my promise to myself, is like, all right, because of some of my success in business, there's no way I'm willing to take a benefit from the government when there's other people that are more deserving. And maybe that's just my own way of kind of like doing what I think is right. But to answer your question, I think it is an issue. We even had people that, like, were at a fob and, like, a bomb went off 2 miles from the fob, right? And they're claiming PTSD. In this situation, it was a female who's, of course, in a non-combat role, and she had to get sent home from deployment, and is claiming she has, like, night terrors because literally, like, a little, like, IED went off 2 miles from the base. Right. And that's someone then she got to change commands and is probably going to get, like, full disability because she's going to say she has night terrors. And it's like, okay, a person did 4 years in the Navy and they're getting, $3,000 the rest of their life tax free. Those are the ones that fire me up, because those people, in my mind, are clearly taking advantage of the system, and it's unfortunate.
Well, I mean, they're also stealing because the government budget for the Department of Defense is finite. It is not unlimited. And so they're stealing from those who could otherwise have it. I've been mocked for my criticism of the over and excessive use of PTSD as a diagnosed medical condition. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that it is overused and abused, and it does a disservice to those individuals who are clearly and most definitely suffering from the fallout of traumatic experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I think that is abused, and it's for the same reason. I think the people that are abusing it, they're doing it with very deliberate intent, whereas a lot of the people that actually have PTSD are actually the opposite. They're the ones that are kind of saying, "Hey, I don't need anyone's help, and I'm good, and I don't deserve that." And it's like, no, you're the one that actually deserves it. You're the one that's body is probably beat to shit. You've seen some combat, you've seen this. So no, you're the people the system is meant to help. And you know what I mean? And it ends up sometimes being the opposite.
I've got a friend who's an ER doc, and he says that when people come into the ER, they have a list of questions. And those people who know the most about the system are the ones that raise the biggest red flags, because they know how to answer the questions and get their quote unquote drug of choice. It's the guys that don't know about it, that are a little bit ignorant about the system or the process, that I think you can have a little bit more certainty that those are the people who are coming there for the right reasons versus just manipulating the opportunity that's available to them.
100% agree, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Born Primitive, because I told you earlier, I've been using your shorts in particular for years and years at this point. It seems like you started this because you did 8 years with the SEALs. Did you start Born Primitive while you were a SEAL? That's what it sounds like to me.
I actually started it a few months before I joined the Navy, which is
even earlier.
Even earlier. Yeah. Horrible timing. I don't recommend it. I was at Officer Candidate School trying to run a business with one bar of service with a phone that, most people didn't have phones because
what year was that?
That was 2014.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was just a little side hustle. Quick version. I developed a pair of compression shorts for Olympic weightlifters, and that was just our first product. And then it was just this little side hustle. Started it with my wife at the time, Mallory Riley, who still runs the business with me and is the co-founder.
She's the COO, is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. We were married at the time, and we put in a good 6.5, if you count kind of before we were officially business. For me, it was actually probably closer to 7.5 years before we even had an employee and before we even collected a paycheck. So we were living on a single income, pretty much the first 6.5 years I was in the Navy, which was fine. We're simple people. We're from Indiana. Like, we don't need anything lavish. Like, it wasn't like I was in hardship, right? But we were continuing to reinvest every penny back into the business. I think that's probably the biggest kind of perspective I try to give people when they try to put this glamorous, romantic spin on being an entrepreneur. It's not like I want to be that guy like telling war stories about being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, I think it's my obligation to remind people or tell them what it actually is like. And it's like, hey man, you want to go put in 7 years where you don't make a penny, you get divorced every second of your day when you're not in the military is dedicated to this thing. It's constant stress. All you're doing is solving problems. You never have free time. Even when you're on vacation, you're working. Even when you're literally on a helicopter doing your military job, you're answering emails on your iPhone that you've stuffed in your mag pouch. Like, if you want that life, if that sounds exciting, then go for it. But I get a little bit fired up when people try to, maybe give the must be nice comment, or, that they just think like it was handed to you. And it's like, you have no idea, man. So we were fortunate that we were scrappy. I like to use the term dumb enough, like we weren't too dumb to not be good enough to like do the business, but we weren't too smart that we like talked our way out of it. Because if you had applied rational thought to what we did, all right, I'm going to OCS in 2 months. Yeah, let's launch this little compression short business. Like, it made no sense. But we didn't know any better. And I was actually coming off of a failed business right before that. So again, I was dumb enough to just not be deterred and say, all right, well, screw it. Let's double down and try this again. Now we're going to hit our 11-year mark, and we have about 80 employees, and we're sold all over the world. And we're building a 58,000 square foot facility right down the road from here, with our fulfillment center and headquarters attached. It's 170 yards long. It's massive. Big American flag on the roof and the whole deal. So it's come a long way, but it's been a long road. There's been obviously a lot of hardship and hard work put into it. But that's, I think, for, people that like us that are, that's just how we're wired, man. There's always got to be the next ridge line you're trying to get to, and it's never ending. You're never going to get to the summit ever. So just put your head down, get after it, do the best you can.
I remember early years where I would stay up till like 2 a.m. stuffing bags of battle planners and other things that we have available. And even now, 10 years into the business, my kids, I've got 4 kids, 16, 13, 11, and 8. I'm in the garage, man. Like, we're filling orders. We're sending hats. We're sending shirts. We're sending planners. We're sending decals. My kids are the ones that are fulfilling those orders. People think all the time it's this big glamorous, operation. And yeah, at this point, you might get to it and you feel like maybe you've arrived to some degree. But at the end of the day, like, it requires those late nights, those early mornings, having your kids enlisted. Date night is spent packing envelopes and printing shipping labels that most people just don't ever see. And they think, here's one critique I get a lot. And I want to share this with you because I think you would probably agree with this, is they'll say like, Ryan, I wish you'd have more like average guys, ordinary average guys on the podcast. I'm like, no offense, you are an average guy. Everybody else I've ever had on the podcast, over 500 interviews that I've done at this point, they're all average. They've just been exceptional at a few things for a long period of time.
Yeah, spot on, man. There's nothing, and that's to me, I want to grab people sometimes because I think they lack the self-confidence because they think this is some elusive thing that only these elite people can achieve. And it's like, no, man, that's, you're looking at it all wrong. You know what I mean? You need to find a narrow lane that you're passionate about and go at it with, reckless abandon, and, you can achieve success with that approach. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Like, at one side, I want people to know how the real side of being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, I want people to be encouraged that, that they can pursue it. If they're staring at the ceiling every night, thinking about it, that means they need to do it, right? If they're looking at it, oh, that looks glamorous and cool, and I'll get some Instagram followers, and maybe girls will want to date me or something like that, then don't do it, because those aren't the reasons you should be doing that sort of thing. But yeah, man, it's not for everyone. I speak at an event typically about every quarter. It's called the Honor Foundation, and they bring mostly transitioning special operations guys and put them through like a little, I think it's about a 3-month boot camp, revising your resume, how to do an interview, how to network, all these things. Really cool thing. Great program they do for these guys and girls. And typically they host an entrepreneur panel once a quarter for each class. And they've invited me. It's local here in Virginia Beach. And there's other service members or former service members that are entrepreneurs as well. And they can just fire away at questions. And I think typically they think I'm going to give this like sexy, glamorous answer about how awesome it's going to be. And, you should, definitely do it. And, for some of these guys, it's like they've done 20 years, they're in their 40s, they're retired, they got 3 kids, they're married, they've been gone 90% of the time, their entire, kid's life. And I'm like, hey man, now's not the time to go try to start a coffee company, right? Go work for the man. You know what I mean? Build equity with your family, be able to punch out at 5 every day and not have to bring it home and be dealing with lawyers and bankers and, emails in the middle of the night and lawsuits and all the things that are going to come with what you're about to do. Maybe it's okay to go work for the quote man, right? It's not always a bad thing to have consistency, but a little less responsibility. Or hey, if you're staring at the ceiling every night and you're wired for this, then okay, you can go for it, but just make sure you calculate that, what is your financial risk threshold? How is your family right now? Do you need to take some time to build some equity back with the kids and the wife? You know what I mean? These are all things that need to be considered when they kind of make that, kind of that assessment of whether I should do this or not. And I think a lot of guys are surprised when I give that answer, because I think they think I'm going to come in and say, oh yeah, go for it.
Burn the bridges.
Yeah. Slide the chips in. And, there's a time and place for that. I just don't think, if you're 44 with 3 kids and maybe a marriage on the rocks, that's the time to say, all right, now I'm going to be gone 90% of the time again, because I'm going to need to start this concept from scratch,
Well, I think one of the things that I really resonate and appreciate about your story is that's not what you did. You didn't burn the bridges. You didn't go all in. You had this career in the military. And while you were doing that, you did this side thing that you were passionate and excited about, weren't making a whole lot of money. But over the course of a decade, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, all of a sudden you get out of the military and now you turn a business that you weren't making a dime in the first 7 years, like you said, to a 9-figure business, precisely because you did not burn the boats, as they say.
Yeah. I hear that a lot, and I've even used it in certain contexts. I would say burn the boats on relationships, right? Like if you have a bad romantic relationship, burn the boats, don't look back, because you need to move on. There's times where burning the boats is 100% applicable. But I think for a lot of people, having a side hustle, assuming you have what it takes to be a self-starter, I don't want you to slide the chips all in, because there's a 93% chance it's not going to work, right? So if you were playing roulette, right, and you were going to slide all the chips in, and you knew there was a 93% chance it was going to go red, and you're putting it on black, you probably wouldn't make that bet, would you? Right? Maybe we slide a couple chips in and we hedge our other bets. So I think with people that are making that assessment, they got to keep that in mind. And I was fortunate, right? I was getting a stable paycheck. I had health care, my worst case scenario wasn't bad, right? I was living a young man's dream, as a young SEAL.
Let's be honest. Your worst case scenario based on your occupation of choice is that you would die. Let's not discount that, right?
Well, yeah, I meant as far as like a financial outcome, right? Like if Born Primitive, I put 6 years in and finally it just imploded, all right,
Fair enough.
do I
Right.
lose a lot of my life that I, wasted, towards this effort, and some money? Yes, but I still have a stable job. I'm with the boys. I'm getting after it. I'm living the dream that I wanted as a young man. But some people don't have that fallback. So I think if people are going to slide the chips in, again, it just needs to be a little calculated. But I think taking a 9 to 5 and having it as a side hustle for a while isn't a bad gig. Now, your lifestyle is going to suck. That's the only drawback with that. Is like you're not going to have a free minute. And I even remember, I've told this story a few times, like Mal and I went to Hawaii twice. Like we never took a vacation, and finally we're like, all right, we got to take like at least one vacation. I think it was on pre-deployment leave, right? So I'm about to deploy for 6 or 7 months. We went to Hawaii, and because it was 5 hours ahead of East Coast time, we would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and start working until noon. That was our deal. All right, we'll get up at like 3:45. We're on the computer by 4, and that way we're working a normal work day with our employees. And then when the Starbucks would open at like 6 a.m., we would shift over to the Starbucks and we'd go there till lunch. And then, okay, now it's 12:30. Let's go get some lunch. And now our vacation day starts, right? We did that for 6 days straight. For us, that was like implied. We didn't even have to discuss it. There was no argument. Like we're like, of course we're doing this because that's how we were wired. For some people, they might think you're a total maniac for doing that. You're on vacation, you're going to bed at 7:45 at night. That's a little nuts, right? You should be, out having a good time and doing what normal people do on vacation. But that's what it took, right? There is collateral damage that comes with that approach. Eventually that check engine light's going to come on, and it definitely did. One, for our relationship, but I think two, just for me, just burning out. And that's something you got to be cautious with, but. That's one of many examples I can give where we had no choice but to do what others were not willing to do in order to succeed, because we didn't have the financial backing. I wasn't out talking with private equity guys and having them cut me checks so I can sponsor the new sexiest fancy athlete and all these endorsements. We had to do it the old fashioned way. And it took longer to get there. But I'm glad we did it that way, because now we know, one, how to be profitable, because you have to be profitable in a business like that isn't getting backed by a PE firm. And two, you become super resourceful with how you deploy capital. So in the event we raise capital in a couple of years, it's going to be a game changer, because I know how to use it, right? I wasn't cut a $10 million check 2 years in, like some of these companies, and then they get a false sense of success. It's like, well, of course everyone knows about your brand because you got $10 million from a guy from New York, right? Whereas, if you're able to cut your teeth with no outside capital, we had combined in our bank account $3,800 when we started it, and had to put $2,000 in. So cut the old net worth in half, and let's do this thing.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Was Mallory always on board with you, or were there? Because a lot of guys are like, "Hey, I want to start this thing. I want to, start a business, side hustle, whatever. How do I get my wife on board?" That's a question I get a lot.
I honestly, at first, it was just me, and this is the very, very beginning. So I will always still consider her a co-founder, but there was 6 to 8 months of me staying up real late at night, researching supply chain and how to develop a product and reading these books and stuff, where it was just him doing another one of his crazy ideas. That's probably, whatever. But once it started going, just because she was a good spouse, she just started helping, like in her spare time. She was a dental hygienist, but she'd be coming home and, all right, let me help with this order and this. And then when I went to OCS, it was kind of like she didn't have a choice, because I was like, well, hey, I might not have my phone for 12 weeks. So like, I kind of need you to help with this. Now at the time, of course, it's very small. So it's not like it's running with the entity we're running now. So it just kind of happened. And that's one of those things I would say for anyone that's like looking to launch your own business, I would highly advise against doing any business with your spouse. I think if I were to go back and do it again, if I get remarried, I'm not involving them in my business at all.
You're saying that because the business might cause you to get remarried, or what?
What? Well, I'm just saying, because Mal and I aren't married anymore. We're divorced. Yeah, we have.
I didn't know that. Sorry, I didn't know that. I got it. Okay, I'm tracking now.
So, that was about 6 years ago. But the cool thing is,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, all good. The cool thing is we're on great terms. She's married now with a beautiful little girl and another one on the way. And it's cool, honestly, to be able to like just still run a business together. And it's completely cordial. It's
That's
chill.
unique.
Honestly, it's
Yeah,
way
that's
easier.
unique.
It's way easier. We kind of joke about that now. It's like, I don't have to go home and argue with you at home. I could just, you can yell at me and then I get to leave. You know what I mean? So it's funny. But if I ever get remarried, it's like, all right, that I'm not involving the two, because your spouse needs to be, in my opinion, your refuge from, the battles you're fighting during the day. And the last thing I need is another business partner. And I go home and we're drinking a glass of wine, talking about that supplier or that lawyer email we got, or that lawsuit that we got coming, or whatever. All these things that come in when you're a business owner that, really can be a high source of stress. I want to separate the two. So I did that one perhaps the wrong way the first go, but I learned a lot. So it's all good.
Well, when you were saying, there was a disconnect for me. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I got to figure this out. I did not know that, but that's a very unique situation. Is there like personal contention that gets in the way at times of the business stuff, or how have you guys been able to separate the personal and the professional life?
We're both pretty hard-headed, so we kind of argue like siblings. Every once in a while. We're way better than we used to be. When we were married, we argued like spouses, right? Now we argue like siblings. So every once in a while it'll flare up when there's a difference in business opinion on an approach. But it's pretty minimal, and honestly, it's way better. And what's cool for me is like she has earned every piece of equity she has in this company, because her and I were in the trenches together. Like 6-7 years, like I already talked about it, like no one knows to the extent we were in the trenches, just duking it out, trying to build this thing. So it's cool for me as this thing grows to see as her equity value grows, like she earned that. Right. And it's cool. Like, because she was a dental hygienist, knew nothing about business. Right. And just got thrown into this. And has absolutely crushed it and is a complete savage now. So that's cool for me to see, that like, all right, she completely evolved and now like she can hang in any room at any level. I don't care if it's a Fortune 500 company, it's their C-suite. You throw her in a meeting with them, she will throw down and she will hold her own. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's such an interesting scenario. I think about with my own situation and my divorce. I have the business 100%. My ex helped me with some things here and there, but never involved her directly in the company as an employee or a worker or something of the company. She just supported where she could. And that's interesting, man.
Yeah. And part of it honestly was definitely contributed was like, because I wanted to go to the SEAL teams. Right. So that was a point of contention when I told her, hey, I have to go do this. I was 25 at the time and she thought I had given up the dream, and I lied. I hadn't. It was still eating me up inside. And I kind of gave her an ultimatum one day of like, hey, I'm getting back in the pipeline. I'm going to try to apply for this and get into the program. And hey, if you're not cool with it, it's totally fine. But like, you take 24 hours and give me your final decision. And if you're not going to support it, it's all good, but we need to go our separate ways. And then I remember the next morning she like walked to the kitchen. She's like, all right, you can do it, but you better not effing quit. And I was like, okay, that's fair. I won't quit. Let's do this. But when you're gone as much as we're gone and then trying to run a business, eventually that takes a toll. Because in many times the burden was on her shoulders, when I was out of comms and she couldn't get a hold of me, or just, work trips that are just busy, we're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get back to our hotel rooms at midnight. And like, I can't contribute as much, of course, in those, time frames, then she's like, all right, well, hey, this wasn't my dream, but I'm doing all the work. Like, what the heck, and I can totally understand that now. Hopefully now she knows it's her dream as well, because it's allowing her to provide a great life for her family. And, we'll give her hopefully long-term financial security for generations. So it is her dream now, but maybe it's not the one she initially signed up for.
You said you lied. Did you lie or did you not know?
What about
joining the teams and that pursuit that you had? It sounds like since the time you were little. Was it that you blatantly lied about it, or you just didn't know and you kind of came to some conclusions? What did that look like?
I knew I wanted to do it. And when I got out of college, I had to repair a shoulder surgery because I was banged up from playing football. So that was kind of like, all
injury,
right, yeah, let me go take a normal job. I need to get in different kind of physical shape because I was a big meathead linebacker, and that doesn't help you in SEAL training. So I was like, all right, I got to cut 20 pounds, learn how to run, do this and that, and I need to fix my shoulder, right? So that required me to get a real job, right? So to hold me over. And once I healed up the shoulder up, I started training to get into the Buds pipeline. But I was getting a ton of pressure from her family and mainly my mom. My dad was cool with it, but it was like my mom, both of her parents and her were like, just so against this. And it ended up, culminating where I ultimately really kind of rescinded my application. I was in the process of applying to get into the officer pipeline. And I finally was like, all right, you guys win, screw it, I'm out. And I kind of like, it was in frustration, but I kind of, just said it, but I couldn't kick it. So about a year went by, and I just couldn't kick it. So I started secretly training at the pool and at the track again without telling anyone, and just kind of seeing if I could get back into shape and do this. I mean, I was in shape, but the specific for that, like the PST. Right. And then ultimately I had to give her that ultimatum because she it was funny. She actually found, I've told this story a few times, but she found where she started to get suspicious is she found wet rope in my gym bag. Because I was doing some drown proofing in the pool where you tie your hands behind your back, and practice that, which we ultimately have to do with your hands and feet tied. But when you're practicing it, you obviously just do one or the other. And she found this string of wet rope in my gym bag. And she was like, cause she was like going to throw my gym laundry in or something. And she was like, walks into the kitchen, like, what is this? And it's like, how do you talk your way out of that one? It's you got to just come clean, right? So I was
she didn't think it was some sort of sexual fetish. She knew exactly that you were training for SEALs.
Yeah, well, you'd have to ask her. Maybe she did, but maybe the news I gave her was better than she thought was coming. But then I kind of had to have the conversation. Hey, as a grown man, you have to be able to pursue the things that you're passionate about, and if anyone inhibits you from doing that, there will likely be some form of resentment towards those people the rest of your life, even if it's deep down inside of you, right? Like maybe it's not seen on the surface, but I just told her like, hey, if I'm 50 years old and I'm still thinking about this, and you and your parents and my mom were the people that didn't let me at least try, that's going to create some energy inside that I don't think will manifest in a good way. So, hey, I just got to do this. And if there's consequences, consequences be damned, but this is what's going to happen. And in hindsight, I'm very glad that I did. I think my life path would have been a whole lot different. But it comes with, with those decisions, there's collateral damage that can come with those sorts of things. You just got to be willing to accept that.
I think you may have answered the question, but I want to just dive a little bit deeper. Given where you are right now, in hindsight, if you were to rewind to those moments, would you do it the same way or would you do it differently?
It's a tough one. I think I would do it the same way. I don't have any regrets on choosing to go into the SEAL teams. I think that is 100% something I needed to do. It was where I belonged. I met so many good men that are just, it's so humbling to be around those type of people. It was like every room I walked in, I'm just like, man, I am the least accomplished man in this room. And it's really humbling to be around just that caliber of individual, because I think 90% of our success in life is just surrounding yourself with the right people. And I was fortunate to be in that environment for about 8 years. So no regrets there. Obviously I have great relationships that'll carry the rest of my life with these guys. One thing I do reflect on a little bit is, did I push the pace a little too much, right? Was I a little bit too much of a maniac as it pertains to obviously doing the active duty job, but being so relentless about Born Primitive when there was free time? Could I have throttled it down one notch, and had, maybe on those vacations been like, all right, we're not working for 6 days, we're going to recharge the battery. Or when you get off of a 1 month training trip, and you get home and you haven't seen your spouse in a month, maybe saying, hey, we're going to take 48 hours and do things we enjoy together as a couple, not like, hey, did you see that email from so-and-so? And hey, we got this lawyer we got to take a call with, blah, 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 blah. It's like right back into work mode. I don't know if I had toned it down, if we would have achieved what we achieved. So that's the dilemma. It's like, well, if you want to be above average, then yeah, you can tone it down a notch, but then all these things you have now might not exist. But you'd probably still be married, right? So it's something that you wrestle with a little bit. But as you know, like in the early days, especially before you have infrastructure and people that are like kind of, delegating some of the task, like it's all on you. I remember American Eagle was trying to sue us. We had stitched a thread on a back pocket of a pair of jean shorts that they thought was similar to theirs, which was ridiculous. I didn't even know you could trademark a thread pattern, right? So this is just me being great. And here it's just Mal and I, and they're trying to sue us. And I had to get on a call with 3 partners from a law firm that probably all bill $2,000 an hour. It's a New York City law firm. And I'm on a work trip, working 14-hour days, shooting live rounds in the kill house all day long, working out in the morning, range during the day, night runs, the whole deal, and get back to my hotel room at a Marriott at 11 o'clock at night and having to prep to do a call with these lawyers. And I'm studying. I found my old Yale pre-law notes about trademark and all these other things, and I'm reading through it so I could come into this, because we can't afford a lawyer, right? These were the things. These are like the daily. This is the normal life, day in the life of an entrepreneur. And I just think back to some of those moments. It's just like, it's crazy. Now that ultimately worked out and actually went really well. We agreed to both donate money to charity together as a joint effort. Because I actually, my notes came in handy. And it was wild because I was actually able to cite some precedent on the call. And I was like, listen, I know you guys are all $6,000 to combine right now. I don't think it'll look good for your client if you go after an active duty veteran. We actually didn't do anything wrong. So, hey, let's do a feel good ending to this. Let's donate some money to charity together and call it good. And they end up taking that deal. So,
that's creative.
One of the many stories where but again, she wasn't sleeping because it was her like mistake. So she was like, did I just end the company? And you have all these lawyers breathing out her neck and sending us these scary letters. And I was like, all right, let me try to take this one. But, kind of had to fake it till I made it. But they didn't know I was, an hour earlier was shooting live rounds in a kill house. And now I got to put that cap on and pretend like this stoic businessman that knows something about trademark precedent. You know what I mean? Just ridiculous.
It is interesting because I think, to your point, the overwhelming majority of men that I've had on the podcast have done extraordinary things to their own degree, whether it's business or physical acumen or, anything. And then I'll hear from a lot of guys, as I told you earlier, like, oh, we want average guys, ordinary guys on. And I'm like, man, you wouldn't listen to the grandpa who had 5 kids and 27 grandkids and made 80 grand a year and retired with a Rolex and just lived a quiet, harmonious life. You wouldn't listen to that. And I know that because we've had those people on. You don't listen. It's always the ones who are a little bit obsessive, a little bit compulsive, go over the top, go all in, pour everything into it, that people are most interested in. It seems like, based on at least the numbers I have.
Yeah, well, hopefully the listeners can get a little nugget out of this, but I definitely have always been someone that I push the pace. I take a lot of risk. And I think that's another thing. It's like, I believe success, as cheesy as it sounds, is right at the edge of failure. And I do believe the reason a lot of people don't succeed is just purely they're unwilling to take risk. And thank God, for whatever reason, I've always been the opposite. Like, I love risk, and I'm like, and maybe it's to a fault in some cases. Now I have my brother, who's our CFO. That's kind of like my break. I tend to be all gas, and it's like, gut instinct, Kentucky windage, like, just let's go with this thing and see what happens. And that was kind of how the Veterans Day thing played out. I was just sitting there and I'm like, man, what if we could do $5 million in debt? Like, that's, most people would say, you're insane. What are you talking about? But you got to be a little nuts, right? I don't know where else to go with that one, but I believe take some risk, particularly early on. I think as you get older and there's more people dependent on you, that's where I start to, assume a little less risk. Now I'm a father. I got a little 3.5-year-old running around. I do look at the world a little bit differently. But hey, if you're in your late 20s and you're single with no kids, take all the risk, because the worst case that can happen is like nothing, right? Like, okay, worst case, you got to get a shitty apartment and eat ramen for a year. Big deal. You know what I mean? That's fine. We still have 90, so much more than any other country when you compare it. So if you're in that boat, take advantage of it, take some risk.
That's exactly what I tell, like, guys who are in their 20s are like, what should I do? I'm like, you shouldn't do anything except for anything that you feel like doing at this point. Go on all the vacations, go on all the travel, date as many women as you can, like do whatever you can, because it only gets more constrictive, which is not always a bad thing, by the way. As we mature, we don't need to sow our oats that way.
Yeah.
But if right now, man, if you can afford a one-way ticket to Thailand and that's it, go do that, because you'll figure out a way to get home if you want. But go figure it out, man. Like, I wish I would have done that. I didn't, but I wish I would have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that kind of lesson also applies to, I think, transitioning service members, is because I talk with a lot of guys that are on their way out, and I think they get this paralysis of analysis of like, I don't know what my path is, and like, I don't know, I'm not sure what to do. And I could like go to Wall Street and do finance, but that just sounds crazy. Or I could go be a contractor and basically do the same job, and I'm still gone a lot. And usually what I tell them is, hey man, stop putting so much pressure on yourself, because you don't have to get the first pick right? You can go work for that contractor, and in 4 months, if you don't like it, just change your job. Same thing with, college kids that are worried about, oh my God, like what job do I take? Hey man, just pick a lane. That's not going to be what you do anyway. And because every one of those life events is an opportunity to learn an incredible amount. Even if it's a business, you launch it, it fails. The amount of things I learned when I failed my first business, I immediately applied it to Born Primitive. And now there's all these landmines that I didn't know about before that I'm now hyper vigilant on, because I just did it the wrong way the first time. There was an incredible amount of value in 3.5 years of my life that I had wasted towards this other effort that I could immediately apply. So in the moment, was it the wrong move to try to start that business? Yes. But was I able to weaponize that to create success for the next go at it? 100%. So that's kind of what I tell guys is like, hey, don't get paralyzed with analysis on which, course to take. Get a direction to travel, move out on it, and then figure it out, right? You're going to get new data that's going to come in. Your life's going to change. You might get a kid. You might get you might start dating a girl or whatever. Like, things are going to change anyway. So don't put too much pressure on yourself in figuring out what that is, because ultimately I think guys will find clarity.
Yeah, and you can only find it once you go. I mean, you went to Yale. What is your degree?
Political science.
Political science. So
yeah.
I mean, and yeah, I'm sure you have some ideas and insight into that. But now all of a sudden you're this business owner that's running this 9-figure business, a little bit different than what you may have set out for when you started your college years.
Oh yeah. And how random is it? I'm in the garage trying to figure out how to make a compression short, right? Like, that's not like
right.
2 years before that, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Right. So and that's my whole point is you're not going to have some crystal ball that's going to lay it all out for you. But again, I think, guys need to take action to get a direction of travel in some direction, right? So you can kind of orient yourself to what's going on. I think guys that are just comfortable with the status quo, you're going to keep getting the status quo, right? And in some cases, that's great if that's the place you're at in your life. But if you want something to change, you got to make it happen, right?
Do you see any foreseeable pivots in your life? Obviously, you're going to continue to evolve and adapt with Born Primitive. That's a given. But are there any major pivots, whether it's selling the company and pursuing something completely different, or something life altering, as opposed to just little adjustments along the way? I
don't think so. I think we'll probably try to take on a minority investment for Born Primitive in the next 2 years. Because I think if done right and with the right partner, that can be a force multiplier for us to become even bigger. Because part of me now wants to see, I just want to see how big we can make this thing. And particularly with, as I've realized, as our platform gets bigger, our ability to give back and do things like we did for Veterans Day continues to get bigger. And that's a huge source of personal fulfillment for me. And, in a way, I guess, self-serving, like, when I get to call a veteran on the phone and tell them their $183,000 bills now zero, that's a pretty cool experience.
I bet.
And to know that at its core is as a result of Mal and I's efforts way back in the day that, led us to this moment. That's a pretty cool and motivating experience. So I also know this, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts about founders that sold. Most of them, while of course it produces incredible financial liquidity for them and it can change their life forever, on the financial front, a lot of them have identity crises when it's done, because for so many of them, part of your identity is wrapped up into this business. And all of a sudden you get a big deposit that hits your bank account and you got a company that says, hey, thanks, but we don't need you anymore, and go do good things. They wake up the next day, and after that euphoria is gone, they're like, all right, what the heck do I do now? And I'm not naive to that. Like, I know that would happen with me, and I would last 24 hours before I'm spinning up the next business. I guarantee it. I'd probably have a legal pad out the next morning, drinking a cup of coffee saying, all right, what's the next angle here? I know it for a fact. So I've accepted the fact that I'm always going to be a bit of a maniac. And I will always be pursuing something. I'm not going to retire at 40 and be like, all right, I'm going to go surf the rest of my life. There's just no way. I don't know balance. But so that, because of that, I would like to still have Born Primitive around for a very long time. And because I also think it would be very cool, and this is a long shot, to start bringing my daughter into the business when she's a teenager, to start teaching her about business and fashion and product design, and have her sit on calls while I'm talking to some lawyer that's trying to sue us. And so she sees how I deal with people, and when to be assertive and to not let people push you around, and when to be empathetic, and all these things that just by her watching when she's 14 could be really cool. And then before I know it, she gets out of college and she's, an entry level position, earning earning her keep here. That would be a lot of fun for me to experience as a father. So that's a long way down the road, but I do think about that occasionally.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool. I think about that with my own kids, and I don't know if they'll take this business on or follow in my footsteps. Whether they do or not is fine. They can choose their path, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that it would be nice if one of them decided they wanted to take up the mantle, for sure.
That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I actually just invested in a company that the two owners, the founders of the business, got bought out in a way that was less than favorable, and they sat on some ideas for, I think, 3 or 4 years because they had a non-compete, and that non-compete just expired, and they're ready to get back in the game. I'm like, I'm going to invest in you, not the company, but you've already done it once. You're a little bit agitated and you're hungry. So I think I'll invest in you at this point. And I'm very, very excited to see what they do. I think that lines up with what you're saying.
I like that bet, because I think the position they're in, if they've been held back from starting because of the non-compete, and they got maybe done dirty a little bit on the last transaction, I think you're making a good bet, because that seems like a recipe for success.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, brother, this has been a great conversation. I think we might need to have a round two, because I got a lot of other things that I plan on talking with you about, but I'm actually just taking a little bit of my own notes for my own personal reference. I hope other people got value from this conversation. I'm excited to see what you guys are doing. I think I saw an ad the other day on Facebook for some shoes that you guys are putting out. It's the Gadsden flag shoes. And it's funny when you see just the criticism that comes with all of this stuff. I've been in the game long enough where I just think it's funny at this point, and I'll get offended by stuff. I think it's just funny. But you guys are doing some cool stuff, man. And I'm very excited to be able to support you guys and learn more about what you're doing, and get to know you a little bit. Tell the guys where to connect, where to learn more about what you're doing. And then obviously what I'd like to do is next year plan ahead a little bit better on my part to get you involved prior to and in coordination with Veterans Day, because I think we can do some things with our community as well to serve you guys.
Love that, man. Yeah, so we're at bornprimitive.com, and then social media at Born Primitive. I'm at Bear Hanlon, but my Instagram's not that cool. Yeah, you can find all of our stuff there. We have fitness, athleisure, flannels, jeans, tactical, hunting and outdoor, footwear. I mean, pretty much anything for anybody is there. And I think you said, when this airs, it'll actually be our last day of our Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale. It's going to end Tuesday at midnight. So if you're in the market, today's the last day. Get in and get after it. But we'll have some holiday deals in December too. And yes, we do plan on doing the Veterans Day thing next year. It will be medical bills again. And I can kind of tease this. It looks like we're going to try to join forces with Black Rifle, and this is unofficial.
Oh, nice.
But I'm going to go meet those guys. Evan and I was on Evan's podcast, during Veterans Day, and after the call, I kind of said, "Hey man, it'd be great to get you guys a part of this. This is a pretty damn impactful thing, and like you guys with your reach, we could do even more together." No
doubt.
And I'm trying to get the UFC involved as well. Now that's a long shot. I have a call with them tomorrow actually, because I know the DNA and the mentality of that organization. I think it aligns perfectly. They always do a big fight Veterans Day weekend, usually at MSG. How cool would it be to have them a part of this, and the three of us combined? I want to get to 50 million. So I'm calling my shot now. That's me being, again, dumb enough to not know any better, and to think big. And if it doesn't scare you, it's probably not big enough. So, plenty more, of that on the horizon for us. And we want to make sure it's not just about apparel. We're proud of our country. We're proud of what it stands for. We're proud of the flag. We're always going to be unapologetic in our approach of that. Fortunately, it seems society is correcting a bit to that mindset. But for a while there, it seemed like we were alone and unafraid, man. We weren't getting a whole lot of support, in corporate America with, I got the Constitution on my arm and a skeleton, George Washington, and an American flag right behind me. Like that was not mainstream, right? But that's who we were. And we're going to be true to who we are. This is in our DNA. Half of our employees are veterans and former first responders and spouses of those individuals. So this is not a punchline for us. This is who we are, and it's authentic. And I'm happy to see society coming around to it a little bit and correcting to what I deemed some complete insanity that I was witnessing over the last few years. I think, I'm happy to say we were on the front end of that. We held the line on who we were, even at a time when it was very uncomfortable to do so, in kind of the corporate brand world.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing it. Evan is a great person over at Black Rifle. Mutual friends with him. Also, Sean Ryan doing incredible things as well. Mutual friends there. I think there's a lot that we can be able to help each other with this, and more importantly, help veterans. That's the goal, right? These guys and gals have given so much back to this country. I think we can sacrifice and give a little bit back to them. So we'll sync everything up. Bear, I appreciate you, man. Looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. And guys, support Born Primitive, support Bear. You're gonna do good things, but you're also gonna get a little benefit in the meantime as well. So check these guys out. Bear, thank you very much, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.